Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. This week's portion is that of Ki Savo. Parshas Ki Savo, we have the Toichacha, words of rebuke. Our commentaries explain that we find Toichacha two places in the Torah. One is in Parshas Bechukoisai, and one is here in Parshas Ki Savo. And Parshas Bechukoisai deals with the destruction of the first temple and the exiles that followed. And the Parsha of Ki Savo deals with the destruction of the second temple and the exile in which we find ourselves in to this very day. And as the Parsha goes on, the tsaros that it describes get increasingly more difficult to the degree that those who witnessed or have studied and learned or heard about the Holocaust recognize that the words of Moshe Rabbeinu have come to fruition, that we were oppressed, we were taken into slavery, our property was stolen from us, we were starved, our children were taken away, our women were abused, our lives were worthless. As the morning came, we said, if only we could have the peace and comfort that we had last evening. And as evening comes, we would say, if only we could have the day, the morning that preceded this. Every single day, the tsaros would get increasingly more severe. We will be dispersed amongst nations that are so cruel and heartless, and they will perform atrocities that have been unknown unto mankind. They will do it on a level that astounds individuals. Everything that Hashem has spoken that will result from our paying no attention to the existence of God, everything that he said, it's not a punishment, it's a fact. Hashem is telling us, if you put your hand in fire, you will be burned. It's not a punishment. That's the nature of fire. If we behave in such a manner in which God has no role in our existence, then we will find ourselves subject to the whims of the cruelest beasts that walk the face of the earth. We will find ourselves in circumstances in which we will have to eat the flesh of our own children to survive. And indeed, everything that is described here has come true. Not only that, there are codes that our sages have revealed. Codes, various letters, they form a pattern. Every fifth letter of every second verse or whatever, it forms a pattern which actually spells out specific names and places that has occurred during World War II and during the Holocaust. And the very last pasuk of this incredibly sobering portion says, "V'hashivcha Hashem Mitzrayim ba'oniyos." God will make you return in boats to Egypt, the path that I said that you should never return. You will want to sell yourselves as slaves to your enemies, and they won't purchase you. They will turn their heads away as if they don't see the horrors that are befalling our people. The question is, as we find the progression of these incredible atrocities that are happening, painful tsaros, horrific events, returning to Egypt, being sold as slaves, that's a terrible thing. But how does that compare to having one's children taken from them, having women being abused and violated, having everything stolen from us, being enslaved, starved to death, that we have to eat whatever we can find, even human flesh, the remains of human flesh? How does this compare to that? And not only that, but you're going to return to Egypt where you'll want to sell yourselves as slaves, and they might buy you, they might not purchase you. Why is that the exclamation point? This is the question the Bnei Yissaschar presents. In addition, he says that the Torah states you will return to Egypt ba'oniyos, in boats. What's the difference how we return to Egypt? If we go by foot, caravan, by boat, by plane, the important element of the verse is that we will return to Egypt wishing to sell ourselves as slaves. That's how far we have fallen. Of what importance it is, what means of transportation we use. In addition, the word ordinarily used for a boat is safina. That's the Hebrew word, safina. And here it says oniyos, which also means a boat, but that's not the usual common word that is found in the vernacular. The Bnei Yissaschar says an incredible and so relevant an explanation. When Moshe came to Paro, and he says, thus says Hashem, Koyamar Hashem Elokei Ivrim, thus speaks God, the God of the Jews. And what did Paro say? Me Hashem, who is this God that you speak of? I don't know this God, and I won't let the Jews go free. What is Paro saying? I don't know this God? Paro was saying that what? There's no God in the world? What Paro was stating, the commentaries explain. You, Moshe, refer to God as the Mahava, the one who in his great mercy and boundless kindness brings the universe and mankind into existence. And God conducts the world with his mercy and his compassion. I don't know this God that you speak of. I know of gods that are functioning with strict judgment, and they have to be appeased, and we have to bring tribute to them, and we must make sacrifices. But a God of mercy and compassion? I don't know this God whatsoever. I don't see this God who is in total control of everything that happens. I see man as being in control. We, Egypt, we're in control. We are in control of our lives. We are in control of your lives. And I will not let you go. This is the actual dialogue between Moshe and Paro. And indeed, the purpose of the plagues were to demonstrate to Paro and to humanity for all time that God is not just the creator, but he is the total exclusive master of all that exists. Well, what about man? Look what man does. Yes, God has given us free will, but ultimately God, he is the master, and his will be fulfilled and carried out one way or another, with our cooperation or without it. This verse is stating that after all the tsaras, after all the horrible experiences that Klal Yisrael will undergo, we will return to another point, a point of exile which is even more atrocious. And what is that? In Egypt, it wasn't just Paro who maintained that there is a lack of knowledge of this God. That was the Egyptian culture. Paro was nothing more than expressing what the Egyptians believed and what Klal Yisrael had been subjected to. And there were many of Klal Yisrael who, even if they didn't engage in idolatry, nevertheless were infected by this corruption of thought. God created the world. What happens in the world? God doesn't take such an interest. He might take a look every now and then, but it's man who determines what shall occur. And this was a thought. Not only were Klal Yisrael in exile physically, but mentally, spiritually. There was a golus, an exile. Not only our bodies were oppressed and enslaved, our minds became corrupt. We lost knowledge of the constant hand of God who manipulates circumstances to bring about his will. We no longer were able to see the hand of God in all the events that were taking place. Our minds were in exile. We lost knowledge of our Creator. And this is what the verse is telling us, that there will be a period that will come, and hopefully it is behind us, in which we will have to experience horrific suffering. But worse than that, physical suffering attacks the body, but the soul can remain intact. But we will fall to a level in which God will return us Mitzrayim. Look at the language of the verse. It doesn't say V'hashivcha Hashem limitzrayim. It doesn't say God will cause you to return to Egypt, but God will cause Egypt to return. What does it mean, Egypt? It means the exile of Egypt, the corruption of our minds, the inability to recognize and to see and to sense the divine presence amongst us. This is what shall happen. We shall be reduced to such an extent that not only will our bodies suffer, but even our souls and our mind. And that is the worst of all the suffering that one can imagine. How does this come about? That's why the verse says, the Bnei Yissaschar explains, that we will return ba'aniyos, in boats. Why? The word aniyos, why not sephinos? Because the word anios, the root is the word ani, which means I. We will reach a point in which there will be a generation that is concerned only with I, the me generation. Life is all about myself, what I want, what I feel, what makes me happy. I'll serve God as I understand it to be. I will not humble myself to serve as the sages have decried and presented before me. This is the malady. This is the disease of the ani, the ego. And Klal Yisrael will reach a point, whether through suffering or whether it comes through affluence, in which all we can see are myself. I don't see God. I don't see godliness. I don't see Torah. I don't see any responsibility other than satiating my passions and desires. This is the exclamation point, the lowest point that we shall experience in this exile and the suffering. And indeed, this is where we are today. We've experienced the Holocaust, and now we have a generation. Yes, we see again the anti-Semitism, but we have a generation of Jews, countless Jews, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, who've lost contact with their Creator. They don't see God as a viable force in their lives. Maybe once or twice a year they'll pay homage, pay their dues, and spend a couple hours at services. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just say, I'm comfortable with this. I like this tradition. I reject that. It's all about me. All about me. A few years ago, we had a tour in our synagogue, an elderly group of seniors, and the guide who brought them, they were coming from up north, and the guide who brought them was a female rabbi. That was her title. And I took questions and answers. I showed them the beautiful sanctuary that we have in the magnificent Eastern Wall. And I took some questions and answers, and then she asked me a question. She said, what's the Orthodox perspective on abortion? And I responded, and I said, if there are no issues with the mother's life, then abortion is absolutely prohibited. Because there is a fetus, there is a child, there is another life. And she responded and she said, well, we believe that a woman, or she said, I believe that a woman should have control over her own body. It's her body, and she should do what she wants with it. I responded and I said, well, it's not just her body. There's life. There's another life there. And an abortion, when there's a life, is tantamount to murder, manslaughter, killing a child. And not only that, I disagree with your premise. It's not your body. The body doesn't belong to you. This body that we have is on loan, and it will be returned to its creator and master and owner. And there's nothing we can do to stop that. This is not our body. It belongs to God. And therein lies the disagreement. God gave me a body. I can do whatever I want. No, God gave us a body, and we should appreciate his gift, and we should humble ourselves before him to fulfill his will. And his will is very clear in Jewish law. The life of that fetus is sacred. This is the generation we live in, a generation that only knows it's mine and how I feel. We stand on the threshold of Rosh Hashanah, the days of awe. We're in the month of Elul, a time for spiritual inspiration and arousal. And the number one thought should be that we are here for a short time, and everything that we have is a gift from the Almighty. And our purpose to be here is to connect with our Creator. May God give us the strength to deal with the issues that face us and to recognize the truth and stand steadfast that this entire world, it belongs to God, everything in it. La Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya, unto the Lord is the earth and everything that fills it. And our role is to recognize that and connect with our Creator. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay Jewish. Have a wonderful Shabbos.